Even from afar, it's a true privilege for me to share this evening with you as we celebrate the 75-year theatrical journey of the USC School of Dramatic Arts. First of all, I want to thank the School of Dramatic Arts for the immense honor of granting me the Robert Redford Award for Engaged Artist. I also want to extend my appreciation to Richard Weinberg for reading the wonderful letter from Mr. Redford. Through Sundance, Robert Redford has devoted himself to bringing new and diverse voices into the public eye and has built a world forum for the ways in which art can move society forward. So it's quite meaningful for me to hear his words about my work for positive change and to receive this award, which bears his name. I'm currently filming overseas, but I wish I could be there with you in person. I have vivid memories of standing on the stage at the Bing Theater as a student, performing in Brian Clark's Whose Life Is It Anyway? That was a lifetime ago, and yet from across the world today, I still feel connected to you all. As the School of Dramatic Arts commemorates its theatrical journey today, I'd like to share with you some of my own journey to make it to this campus, and how my time here has affected me to this day. My parents left Texas for California when I was 6 weeks old, choosing to leave behind a town with its 40,000 segregated residences in the hopes of building a better life for our family. We moved to 49th Street, less than 2 miles from USC's beautiful campus. Many of my earliest memories are from right here in South Central. I was just 4 years old during the Watts riots in 1965. I remember hearing the sounds of violence erupting around me. When I had to leave the house, I still recall my father carefully choosing a route that would keep me safe. Just a few years later, these blocks formed the small radius I traveled as I walked myself to school each day. The Black Panthers would congregate on one corner and hoist me onto their shoulders as I passed, encouraging me and other local children to join their breakfast program. One day, as I approached the building that served as their headquarters, I was shocked to see that it had been blown up. This was my first understanding of the potential consequences of protesting. I saw that speaking up for what you believe can take great courage. A few years later, I was walking down the street by myself when an older boy I didn't know knocked me out and down and nowhere to the ground. As I lay on my back, I looked up at the sky. I remember how little I understood about why he would do something like that. I didn't have many answers, but I hungered to find out why. I discussed this curiosity with my mother, who was attending USC. She later graduated in both special education and psychology, and ultimately became an amazing teacher for children with disabilities. My mother let me accompany her to USC, and I have distinct memories of holding her hand as she entered me into the campus, this beacon that felt like light years away from my reality. USC is where my mother showed me that life existed outside of the conflict and problems within my neighborhood. I saw that this place recognized my mother's talent, and yet it felt as though those 2 miles away from my home might as well have been in a different galaxy. Later in my childhood, my parents sought out an even better life for our family. We moved to the border of Carson and Compton, where I was on the front lines as the Brims and Pyrus social clubs were becoming what we now know as the Crips and the Bloods. In my adolescence, I saw many of my peers getting consumed by that lifestyle. So by the time I was finishing high school, my quest to understand the people around me had grown deeper. As I searched for my own entry point to engage with those issues, I saw how music bonded people across communities and backgrounds and began to pursue it at Cal Poly. After some early opportunities to sing professionally, I transferred to USC with a scholarship to study classical voice. I can still remember the joy on my mother's face when I was accepted. She beamed with pride at the prestigious university, recognizing my talent as well. As I walked around campus that first year, I felt a tremendous sense of opportunity and possibility. I was accepted into both the music and the acting conservatories. And while I deeply committed to my vocal training, I found that acting might speak to my community in ways that I couldn't express through opera. As I continued on my journey to understand my place in the world and how I was connected to others. So I transferred my focus. In many ways, studying people had been my first acting class, but USC is where I formally studied the craft for the first time. The faculty here taught my classmates and I that while we existed as individuals, our greatest successes as artists would come from our capacity to channel our talent into the dynamics of an ensemble. Our greatest artistry wasn't going to be found in isolation. This was powerful to me, and to this day, I still carry the lessons taught by my speech teacher, Jim Wilson Jr., one of his favorite exercises, which he called "Come to Me." He taught us that actors need to be able to see the actions they want to occur in their scene partner. He said, when you do an action, you need to find a way to connect with people to get a response. Essentially, your own actions work to bring your partner's actions into existence. This task showed my classmates and I how to look outside ourselves and see how deeply our choices connect us in a truly interconnected world. My first opportunity to utilize my training on film was a project that launched my career, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, where I was able to work alongside a few of my classmates from USC like Eric Stoltz and Anthony Edwards. That project was an extension of the ensemble mentality we developed at school, and Anthony even later financed the first play I ever directed professionally, Look Back in Anger. Throughout the 4 decades since my career began, film has been a way for me to continue my search to understand the intricacies of mankind and how I'm linked to humanity. Whether pursuing projects like The Butler, Platoon, or Godfather of Harlem, I've made a conscious effort to select parts and stories that explore themes of social justice and which can expand our consciousness. But what I couldn't have known as I was leaving USC was that assuming many different types of characters would let me open a door to let others take a peek at the joys, angers, and pains from both myself and throughout humanity, and use those experiences to illuminate their own lives. As I worked to go to the core of who I am as a person, acting became my vehicle to uncover what connects us all, and it brought me to Uganda about 15 years ago, as I assumed the role of Idi Amin in The Last King of Scotland. Whenever I develop a character, I'm trying to find a different piece of myself within him, so I immerse myself in each character's world to learn from his surroundings. A meeting like this is how I received my first introduction to former child soldiers, and I embraced the opportunity to speak with them, to listen to what they had gone through. As I heard their stories, I saw an emptiness in their eyes that reminded me of what I saw in the gang members during my adolescence in Los Angeles. I realized that there's a bond, something truly universal in the trauma experienced by young people who are affected by violence in their formative years. This was a seminal experience, and I can remember feeling something begin to shift within me as I continued on my journey. Shortly thereafter, I met an aid worker from Denmark at a soccer game, which was being played by former child soldiers who had become refugees and students. The aid worker was sitting next to me, and I sensed that he was carrying great sorrow throughout the game. Once it was over, I asked him if everything was okay. He told me he had just started a program to return the child soldiers whose families were still alive back to their homes. The night before this game, he had placed the first boy back into his childhood home with his family. This should have been cathartic, but the aid worker's eyes filled with tears as he told me that once this boy returned home, he killed his 8-year-old sister. The boy's brain had been transformed to only know violence. He'd been freed from the war and his captivity within it, but had yet to escape from his mind. Sadly, this wasn't a unique experience. I learned that many of the former child soldiers were too ashamed of what they'd done to even return to their homes and villages, knowing that they wouldn't find acceptance there. I took a look at the youths, and through the hollow look in their eyes, I noticed a glimmer of hope that still lingered. Despite whatever they had experienced, there was still possibility that needed nurturing. When I spoke with them, so many told me that they didn't want to be treated as victims. They wanted a chance to change their own lives. I thought back to when I was attacked as a boy, and the link between my art and my social commitment was suddenly made clear right in front of me. I realized that I was presented with a responsibility toward them to help them access their strength and power rather than defining themselves through violence. This drive was what led to the start of my work with UNESCO and the United Nations, and what later led me to form an NGO called the Whitaker Peace and Development Initiative. WPDI works to empower young women and men from places that have long been affected by conflict and armed violence. Next year will mark our 10th anniversary. We've expanded to operate within 8 countries, including a domestic home right here in Los Angeles. We now touch 500,000 beneficiaries each year and have directly impacted 1.3 million participants around the world. As I've entered this space, I've learned that it's not enough to just remove a source of conflict from someone's life. If that person is unable to fill that void with something new, like a community, an education, or a job, she or he will never find peace. So WPDI finds children and youth from conflict-affected regions, trains them in our 4 pillars: conflict resolution, life skills, computer technology, communication, and social entrepreneurship. After their training, we create opportunities for them to use their skills directly in their communities. We have young people organizing mediation processes, informing villagers about gender-based violence, keeping communities safe from COVID-19. Our participants teach conflict resolution and explore trauma healing in schools so that children can contribute to making their communities more peaceful. Throughout our vocational training program, people find jobs and create ideas for small businesses, and we've now financed 200 of these small businesses. This is an important element of peace building, since many of the greatest conflicts throughout the world are caused by a lack of understanding among people due to basic unmet needs, and through struggles over the lack of necessary resources for survival. So we try to provide our participants with the knowledge and skills that can help them make a difference in their own worlds. And we teach them that in order to achieve success, they have to understand how to work with others, seeing people for their differences, and collaborating with them to build a future together. I like to illustrate this belief in action by sharing the efforts of a young man named Michael, who was able to effect change in South Sudan. Michael learned that soldiers had militarized the school in his neighborhood. He went to the elders of the community to consult with them and ended up offering to negotiate on their behalf with the commander of the troops. And let me use his words. He said, "I explained that barring access to schools destroyed the future of the whole community, a community in which some of the soldiers had parents and brothers and sisters and nieces and nephews. They eventually agreed to depart. This is a great victory. I want you to imagine this brave young man standing in front of a tank and deciding to use his training to lead productive conversations where both parties felt seen and heard. Michael created a ripple effect that will continue for years to come and help to restore peace in his community. When I refer to peace, I believe that it can be more than just tolerance or absence of conflict. True peace is about consciously deciding to support a set of positive choices and behaviors which value dialogue between and within communities. It starts from inside each individual and then grows outward. The peace isn't something that only needs to be prioritized in foreign or troubled areas. It's something that people like you, artists, and those who cultivate and support art can help to achieve. Inside each of you, there is a divine spark. It owes your love, your beauty, and your purpose. Viewed together, all of our sparks become a flame which can light up the world. You hold great power, and from first-hand experience, I know that the arts can amplify their strength and resonance. The very first film I directed, Strapped, was taken to Washington, D.C. during the Brady Act to contextualize gun violence. It was screened right here at the Bing Theater. In recent years, my production company has worked to amplify the debut films of artists like Ryan Coogler, who graduated from USC's film school, Chloe Zhao, the first woman of color to win the Oscar for Best Director, Boots Riley, and many other filmmakers. Whether exploring police brutality through Fruitvale Station, the realities of Native American life on a reservation through songs my brother taught me, or what it means to be marginalized in America today through Sorry to Bother You, all of which received their premieres at Sundance. It's clear that art can be used to advance the ways in which people from underrepresented communities are viewed, both by society and within their own lives. So as social issues persist today, it's powerful for me to see that USC is prioritizing social change as a key element of its mission. This can be seen through WPDI's recent partnership with USC's Institute for Theater and Social Change, through which we've just begun to develop plays in our partner middle schools that focus on social justice themes. As individuals, we all have a responsibility to impact our world and stand up for the things we believe, to help make this a better society for everyone. Early in my life, my mother taught me that you don't have to believe in the same thing I do, but you do have to believe in something. By providing a space where students can nurture both their sense for social justice and their creativity, we're contributing to help a new generation of citizens find their path into a better future. I can't wait to see what we'll be able to do together as our work continues to grow after this pandemic, which we can watch the seed we're beginning to plant now begin to flourish. I take my inspiration from leaders like Mother Teresa, who said, "I can do things you cannot, you can do things I cannot, but together we can do great things." So as I leave you tonight, I ask you to consider what sort of things you can do through your art or through your life. Take a chance or a small step towards how you think our society can evolve into something greater. Because when those individual shifts are viewed collectively, they can change everything. Your actions may seem out of step with someone else's, but they are both moving forward towards a planet that's filled with peace. And each of us can take a step each day. I hope my words have helped you to recognize that we're in this together. So take that chance, take that step. The collective impact of those actions will heal the world. I look forward to finding a time to come to Los Angeles when I can celebrate this remarkable 75th anniversary with the students and faculty of the School of Dramatic Arts. And when I do, I'll be excited to see the social change that stems from the next generation of students here who are just starting on journeys of their own. Until then, thank you again for this honor. I hope you have a beautiful evening, and I'm sending much peace and light till we see each other again. Thank you.